Hi friends, today I want to tell you about what happens in immigration court. Sometimes they're called removal proceedings. What happens in immigration court removal proceedings, what to expect, what will happen, who will speak to you, and what's going to happen next. So let's talk about this. My name is Marina Shepelsky. I'm an immigration attorney with over 20 years experience. I have a firm in New York with other attorneys. We practice in this field: immigration court, deportation, removal proceedings. How do you defend yourself from the government deporting you from United States? So, immigration court. The proceedings in immigration court are generally divided into two phases. You'll be facing the master calendar hearing, the first hearing, which is like a preliminary hearing or more of an administrative hearing, and part two will be the individual hearing, sometimes also known as the merits hearing or removal hearing, where it's basically your bench trial. It's your trial to prove to the government why you shouldn't be deported, and they will try to prove that you should be deported. So everyone has a job and everyone has a role. First of all, immigration court hearings are established through the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR, and they are part of the Department of Justice. People sometimes are surprised to know that the judge, the immigration judge, and the trial attorney, they're called sometimes Office of the Principal Legal Advisor to DHS, they're basically working for the same boss, for the same company, the company being EOIR. And under the umbrella of Department of Justice. But, the judges are not always on the side of the government, especially if you're in liberal states like New York or New Jersey. If you have a court hearing in Boston or Seattle or even Arlington, Virginia, you usually have a pretty good chance of winning. It's not 100%. If you're in a great court, your statistic is maybe 60-70% chance of winning, even with a lawyer and the best possible record. The record is all your paperwork. And in some places, usually the red states, the southern states, your chances of winning are like 5% or 10%. So it's very important where you end up in court. Now let's talk about what happens procedurally. At the master calendar hearing, its goal, its purpose is being an administrative hearing to find out some of the preliminary things in your case and put it on the record. For example, your best language, your address. Will you need a translator or an interpreter for the master calendar hearing and the individual hearing? If you need an interpreter, exactly which language or dialect should they speak? The interpreter is always provided by the government. You cannot bring your own translator or interpreter. So it's very important that they schedule you and the interpreter at the same place at the same time for the next hearing, the individual hearing. Some other procedural matters that have to be figured out is the scheduling. Or at the beginning of the master calendar hearing, they will talk to you about future court dates, and they will set up an individual hearing date or a bond hearing date, things like that. Case identification is also very important. The immigration judge will identify who you are, where you live, who's your attorney, confirm with you, is this your lawyer sitting next to you? Confirm with you your language, I said it before, and who is the government attorney who is sitting on the other side of you. Then the charges and applications. The immigration judge may review the charges against you, being removability. And they will also go over your applications or what you're asking for as relief, as defense from deportation. Those are asylum, cancellation of removal. Sometimes it's a green card or waiver. And those issues will be addressed in the future, but they want you to identify what exactly are you filing for as your application for relief, as your defense from deportation. Legal representation. The immigration judge may ask you if this is your lawyer. Sometimes people go without a lawyer. They will provide you with a list of free organizations that provide free attorneys. Then the judge will talk to you about your rights, the respondent's rights. You have a right to have an attorney there, but they won't pay for your attorney. So you either get a paid attorney that you pay or a free attorney. You have a right to remain silent, and they will tell you what happens if you don't come to court. Basically, if you don't come to court, you will be ordered deported in absentia, in absence. Even without you there, if you don't show up to the court hearing, you could be ordered deported. And finally, there's going to be a translator. So that's part one. When that's over, you will get to speak very little at this hearing. Mostly your attorney will do the speaking, and most of the time, everything has already been submitted to the court before you even get there. So the judge and the prosecutor, everybody knows what's going on in your case. They know you filed for asylum. They know you filed the form I-589, and you can still provide documents later. Part two is the individual hearing or the merits hearing. Its purpose is to have you alone with the judge and the attorney for the government, your interpreter and your lawyer next to you, to talk about your story, to prove what is your relief. If it's asylum, you're in a protected group, you were persecuted or will be persecuted for being, in political opposition, or you were persecuted in your country for your social group. If it's a green card application, you'll go over your green card eligibility or visa eligibility. If it's cancellation of removal, the judge will ask you about your relatives who are U.S. citizens, your children or your spouse or green card holder or parents, and how will they be affected if you get deported, their hardship. Things like that you can discuss at your individual hearing. You will sit across from the government attorney. You will have your lawyer and your interpreter next to you. The interpreter, again, is provided by the government free of charge, and they're neutral to you. So they will just usually translate anything that you say. Your lawyer will begin asking you questions in something called a direct examination. Your lawyer also can do an opening statement to introduce your case. After that, your lawyer will ask you about your story, about the paperwork you provided, that's your evidence, and you will have a right to call witnesses. You are your own witness, but also you could have your spouse testify, friends or anybody who knew what happened and saw what happened to you testify, and also experts can be your witnesses and can also give testimony, speak and testify. This can happen on the phone, by video, or even in person if the judge is asking for an in-person hearing. Your lawyer also can make legal arguments. After your lawyer is done speaking to you and your witnesses, the government can start speaking to you, your witnesses, and potentially even call their witnesses. The government's job is to prove you're removable, you are deportable. If you have a good attorney, they would have spoken to the government's attorney before the hearing and narrowed down the things you will talk about in court, narrowed down the issues, maybe focus on only certain parts of your story, or maybe even agree that your case should be approved and there might not even be like the full testimony. That's still possible. In some cases, if your case is weak, if you cannot really prove your case, they might agree with your lawyer to dismiss the case, to administratively close the case, freeze it. So things can happen at your hearing that you might not fully even understand, but if you listen to this video, you can do some research and you can prepare for your hearing. You can ask your lawyer how they feel about your case, and if it's really bad, maybe you should think about dismissing it or administratively closing it if you have good reasons for it. At the end, both sides, so your lawyer and the government's attorney, can make closing statements, and they will both speak and summarize what was discussed, the testimony, the evidence, the expert witnesses or regular witnesses' testimony, and say what they want to happen legally in this case. And the judge will issue a decision either right away, immediately on the day of your hearing, or at a later date based on everything that was presented to them, what you said, your paperwork, and they will issue an order, a paper that will state, it's a letter from the court, either granting you your relief, asylum, or whatever it is, or deporting you, which is the order of removal, where they deny your case. Usually things get denied because they don't believe you, because you didn't prove your case, because something wasn't right for the judge. But in some cases, if it's a cancellation of removal case, the judge will give you nothing on the date of hearing, ask you to wait sometimes 2 years or more for a visa number to be eligible or available for you. They pull that out, as they say, out of the computer because of the visa quota for cancellation of removal visas, and they will give you an order granting you permanent residence based on cancellation of removal in 2 years. So nothing will happen at the hearing or immediately after the hearing. You'll have to wait for your order. It's important to say that you need a lawyer through this. I don't recommend doing this without a lawyer under any circumstances. You should have an attorney who knows your case, who prepared the paperwork, did the forms with you, presented your story with you, asked you questions about your story, talked to your expert, and did a lot of work prior to you coming to that individual hearing. I hope this video is helpful for you. A lot of these hearings are done by virtual WebEx, like a Zoom type of setup, or in some cases, it's still in person. So be careful on checking the time and the place of your hearing, if it's online virtually or in person. Hope you have a great day. Stay tuned for more videos like this on our channel. Become a follower and follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. Marina Shepelsky, attorney. Bye-bye.